Redstone components are pretty cool. I mean, we've got the piston that pushes things, we've got the sticky piston that pushes and pulls things, we've got the dropper which drops out items, dispenser which dispenses items, hopper which picks up items, and we've got TNT which explodes things. All of these things are really great. But let's be honest, they've been in the game for quite some time now, and sometimes I like to dream up potential future redstone components that I could find useful, and today we're going to be taking a look at 10 of my ideas. Now this first one is what I like to call the rotator block. Now you're going to have to ignore the textures for a lot of the redstone components that are featured in this video because I designed them myself and I'm definitely no texture artist, but the idea behind this one is really quite simple. Any redstone component that's placed in front of it, when the rotator block is powered, it will rotate that component. And depending on the orientation of the rotator block, it will rotate it in different axes, which sounds very complicated, but let me just try my best to demonstrate. If we place a piston in front of this thing and then go around the back and flick the lever, you can see that our piston has now been flipped so it is facing upwards. So originally it was facing across like this, but now it is facing up. Now this could be useful in all sorts of different circumstances. For example, you could spin around repeaters, so you can have redstone crossroads, or you can have two-way repeater systems, so you can send redstone signals in both directions along long lines. You can take comparator outputs from different areas, you could spin around observers so they're observing different things, dispense or drop out items into different spaces. You could even rotate things like pattern, terracotta, or even dragon heads. I mean, can you imagine that thing spinning around? It would look hilarious. Anyway, that's enough talk of rotating bits. Let's move on to the next concept, which is the capacitor. Now, I was secretly quite proud of my texture that I created for the rotator block. This is not a texture that I'm particularly proud of. I mean, that looks distinctly meaty. It looks like you've stored a bunch of meat in a box and then you've forgotten to put it in the fridge, so it's begun to rot, and I don't even want to get started on this one. But I think the concept is pretty cool because we use capacitors all the time in real life. They're incredibly useful because what you can do is you charge them up and then you can discharge them on demand. So here's how I thought it could work. On the inside of this capacitor block, we'd have a GUI where you can click on it and you can set the amount of time that you want to wait before the capacitor discharges. Then all you have to do is power it, and that will charge up our capacitor, meaning that it's now ready to go. And then after the set amount of time has passed, you can move this thing around, you can move it about in the circuit, perhaps put it up next to a piston. After the set amount of time has passed, it will then discharge, giving out a pulse of redstone energy, and this will go back to being an empty capacitor. Now, I don't know about you, but this one seems pretty interesting. It's almost like a more controllable observer. Moving on from that one, I think we can all agree that slime blocks are pretty great. I mean, they were a fantastic addition to the game, and people have built ridiculous, crazy things using slime blocks. Some of those robots that people build, they just get totally ridiculous. But I personally find that slime blocks can be a tiny bit frustrating. For example, the fact that obviously you can't push over 12 blocks of them, and 12 blocks isn't really that many, and they stick to everything. There's no controlling it. All the sides are sticky. Now my concept is that we have what I like to call the sticky slapper. It's a slime block that we can stick to the side of a block. Now I don't have any fancy textures or anything to demonstrate this, so you're just going to have to make use of this and this. So right now we have stuck a slime ball to the side of that block. So now if we place a block next to it, the texture would change and you could see all of the slime seeping over the sides, and those two blocks would then be stuck together. They would act like slime blocks and they would be sticking together and moving together, but none of the other sides would stick to other blocks around it, meaning that you can actually place slime block machines next to other things and not have to worry about immovable objects or going over the push limit. This would revolutionize a lot of redstone contraptions. Now, generally speaking, I object to most logic-based redstone block ideas. So, for example, people have always been saying that we should have an AND gate block, whereas I personally don't think that would be that great. People have been saying that they want a T flip-flop block, an RS NOR latch block, an XOR block, and everything like that. And generally, I say, no, I'd rather we didn't, because I quite like the fact that we have to build these redstone contraptions out of all these circuits that we have to kind of mix together and try and push into small spaces. I like that aspect. But if there's one thing that I could personally get behind, it's a pulse extender repeater. So the idea behind this thing is that if we hit this button right here, these repeaters will just extend out the pulse. Now, each one of those ticks on the repeater is going to do a certain amount of extra added pulse length. So for example, I was thinking that maybe each one of the ticks that we do could add potentially 5 or so redstone ticks to the length of the pulse. That's a bit of a work in progress, but can you imagine how useful that would be? I mean, I use comparative pulse extenders all the time in my redstone builds. I'm using them constantly, and it'd be amazing to just have a little repeater that we could chuck down to extend out a pulse. Just as a quick warning, this one is wacky. This one is really, really wacky, and I'm still not 100% certain on what the uses are for it, but I thought I'd share it anyway. I like to call it the reverse piston. Now, as you can see on the face of it, these look like regular pistons. They just have wooden exteriors as opposed to cobblestone, and they function just like regular pistons as well. But the idea behind them is that if you were to place a block, for example, in front of this regular piston, it wouldn't push the block. It would push itself backwards. That's where the reverse bit comes in, because it's doing the opposite of what a regular piston would do. Of course, the same rule applies to the sticky piston as well, so this thing would push itself backwards, but then when the piston arm retracted, it would then pull itself back up to be next to the block. Yeah. Odd. I don't know how useful it could be, maybe for elevators, potentially flying machines, it could be handy. You'll have to let me know down in the comment section. You should also head down to the comment section and compliment me on my lovely texturing of these reverse pistons, because look, even the inside's been done. These things are really cool looking. Anyway, that's enough talk of the textures. Let's take a look at the next redstone component, which is the wireless redstone lever. Now, I just want to say, I don't think that we should have general wireless redstone in Minecraft. I don't think we should have senders and receivers and things that you can use inside redstone circuitry, because that would take a lot of the fun out of creating redstone circuitry. You wouldn't have to create noodly spaghetti messes. You'd just have wireless senders and receivers everywhere. But the thought of a wireless lever is actually pretty interesting, because it means you can be really versatile with where you place your inputs to things like doors and other bits and bobs like that. Now, the way that this works in my head is that this wireless redstone receiver here detects all wireless redstone levers within, say, for example, a 15 block radius. So you wouldn't be able to specifically assign one wireless redstone lever to one wireless redstone receiver. The redstone receiver would just detect any levers in the local area, which I think keeps things simple and also stops it from being ridiculously overpowered, because otherwise it probably would be. The only thing about that is that if there are multiple levers in the area, would all of them have to be switched off and then one of them switched on for this thing to give an output, or would this thing almost act like an XOR gate? I don't really know. You'll have to let me know down in the comment section how you think it should work. But anyway, the next thing is to do with slime blocks again, or at least it's to do with pistons and pushing blocks. As you know, the maximum number of blocks the regular piston or sticky piston can push in Minecraft is 12 blocks, which may sound like a lot, but it looks like this when you start getting slime blocks involved. However, the new super piston can push far more than 12 blocks. Obviously, I can't show it because that is just a regular, it's just a regular sticky piston that's been retextured by me badly, but the idea is there. I mean, surely we can increase the block pushing up to maybe 24 or 36 blocks in total. It could be really, really expensive. I mean, look, I'm using gold for this thing. You can throw diamonds in there as well. Just allow us to push slightly more blocks than this. Please. I can't tell if this is my worst retexturing or not. I feel like this might be my worst retexturing. It's definitely the creepiest. I mean, geez. Now, despite the fact that it's horrendously ugly, I actually really like the thought of this thing. The idea is that it's a motion detector, and it will detect anything that's moving around in front of it. Now, this prototype is a little bit overpowered in that it can actually see behind itself, on top of itself, and can see through walls. That's not how I'd want it to be in the game. The idea is that it's based on eyesight. So if you're hiding behind a pillar, you can move around as much as you like. If you're standing still, then it's not going to detect you. And if you're using an invisibility potion, then obviously it's not going to be able to detect your presence. Now, if that's a little bit overpowered, which I think it potentially could be, then we could run it on a bit of a cycle. So that eye stays closed for around about 5 seconds, but then it opens briefly. And if it detects any movement while the eye is open, then it will fire off a redstone signal. So that means that if you're raiding someone else's base and they have one of these things, you have 5 seconds to move around, do everything, then once the eye is open you have to stop until the eye closes, and then you can do everything and then stop, and then it closes, then you keep going. It would add a completely new element to the game that we haven't really seen before. Speaking of completely new elements to the game, there's a handful of things going on right here. So what I have done is I have created ridged blocks. So underneath this redstone, we have got ridged iron blocks. Now, not only is this actually quite a cool texture and could be used in a handful of builds, but also these ridges are stopping these two redstone lines from connecting up because the redstone can't travel over the ridge, it can't make its way over there, so it's not connecting up with this redstone line. Now this may sound familiar, remember Bluestone from April Fools a couple years ago? That video did incredibly well and still gets views to this day. People very confused that they can't see Bluestone in their Minecraft inventories, but that was a little bit drastic, okay? That was a totally new system being introduced into the Minecraft, whereas this is quite simple, but also very effective. I mean, you could just place in ridged blocks where you don't want redstone connecting up, and then you could have lots of redstone lines that are very close to one another, and it will allow us to compact redstone circuits massively. And for the final suggestion of today's video, it's going to be a bit of an anti-suggestion. This is a suggestion that goes against what a lot of people suggest should be in the game. A lot of people say the dispensers should be able to place blocks. When you power a dispenser, it should place the block that's inside the dispenser inventory. Now this should also work with saplings, they say. It should also work with wheat and nether wars and everything like that. And to that I say no. I personally think that would be terrible, because then, and I know this sounds strange, but you could automate everything. And you wouldn't really have to play Minecraft anymore, because everything could be automated using redstone, and you could just stand there having your farms do everything. There's something quite nice about the fact that you actually have to go out and you have to gather up resources and you have to use some farms manually, so I really don't think the dispenser should have this feature. So there we go, that just about rounds everything up for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions for the game yourself, then let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to see all of the ideas that you come up with. But anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you really loved it, then make sure to subscribe. But thanks for watching, guys. This has been Mumbo, and I'm out. I'll see you later. Oh, and check out the latest film on the filming channel. New one released just the other day. It's probably one of my personal favourites. Link will be on the end screen.